why don't we talk a little bit about what's new?
Yeah, so I'm excited to show it. This is the first time I've showed this bait to literally anybody. So
Yes, dude. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Hook One Pod. Hey, we're here at Hook One Bait and Tackle in the studio. We're back, and we've got another awesome guest for you. Obviously, as you can tell, Louie's not here. He's busy in the shop selling product, doing what Louie does. Our guest today is Jake Romanack. I've got to work with Jake at the fishing shows. He's from, you probably recognize him from Fishing 411, the local, or not the local, but the TV show around here that a lot of you guys can catch. And Jake, what's going on, man? How are you?
hey Pete, it's been fun, man. It's been a whirlwind of running around fishing all over the Midwest here this year. It's been a good time.
Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit before the episode started, but it really seems like it hasn't stopped for you guys. We saw you guys at the fishing show back in January. Maybe you had some time to yourself in February, but show season kind of went right into filming season, hey?
Not much time at all, and I don't know if I'd have it any other way. Honestly, it's we go from sports shows in the wintertime to rigging boats to right back on the water shooting TV and traveling all over the place. Between my dad and I, we're putting about 50,000 miles a year on each pickup truck, so we're putting a lot of miles on, traveling all over the Midwest for the most part. We do shoot some shows outside of the Midwest, but the majority of what we shoot is within a 14-hour drive of my house here in northern Michigan.
Man, I've got you on Facebook, so I kind of follow along there, and I got your dad on Facebook, so I follow old Mark around, and it looks like you guys had a pretty epic trip out of Ontario. What was that, last week?
Yeah, so we were on Lake Erie, that North Shore of Lake Erie, but we were up in Ontario. Just literally a couple days ago, we were there. We shot a TV show there. Never been there before. Just an absolute beautiful area. The agricultural area was super pretty. And then the fishing, it's like, I don't know if there's a small fish on that North Shore. Everything we caught was big.
Cohos, steelhead, walleye were the three that I saw in the pictures.
Yep.
It was one of the biggest cohos I've ever seen. There were some stud steelhead, and then 8-9 pound walleye it looked like.
Right, we were catching 8-pound walleye as a bycatch. We were there trying to catch steelhead and silverfish and catching 8 to 9 pound walleyes accidentally, which I'll never complain about.
No. So, hey man, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while. I finally got everything set up to where I could shoot the invite out to you. So we're gonna touch a little bit on, you guys created a crankbait with Bill Lewis, the Precise Walleye Crank. So I really want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
You guys got another thing coming out, I guess I'll call it, but you guys have a rod series coming out. So you guys are kind of tackle developers now.
Yeah, that's been a new one if we're not busy enough, now we're adding tackle developers and rod developers to the lineup. But it's been fun. It's been really cool. The way my brain works, the way that I think as a fisherman, I'm always trying to figure out the best way, the easiest way. And that's where, like with the PWC, in my mind right here with this crankbait, what we wanted is, there's a lot of crankbaits out there on the market, but with owning the company Precision Trolling and testing all of these different crankbaits, we wanted to create a crankbait that had the right action, but also got to depth quickly, right? I don't want to have to put a lot of line out to get that bait down to depth. The shorter the lead length is, the less I have to fight that fish from the distance of the boat, the less chance that fish is going to get off. The tighter I can run my gear, the less tangles I have. And so I want a bait that has the right action, but also can get to the depth quickly. And that's kind of where the PWC came from.
Yeah, dude, that's spot on. And I really like that it gets down deeper quicker for that exact reason. Because, like, for us out on St. Clair, a lot of the times we're not fishing any deeper than 14 to 16 foot below, because in the summer you've got the weeds, and
Right.
then in the winter those fish are shallow. And getting deeper quicker is, like, exactly like you said. It's a lot of things that, like, not a lot of people think about, but there's less line out for tangles, less line out to lose the fish. And you can run your boards a lot more effectively that way. So I cannot wait to kind of dive into, how you guys designed it, how to get it down deeper. We talked about it again just before the show, but all the hardware that kind of goes on it, it's got to be a really tedious process.
From start to finish with the bait, working with Bill Lewis has been awesome, because we had told them, they actually came to my dad and I and they said, would you develop a walleye bait? And we said the only way we'll do it, because I don't want to be pegged in one bait, as this is a good crankbait, but you're going to come in my boat, you're not going to see just PWCs in my boat. There's no such thing as a one crankbait that works all the time. You gotta fish a lot of different baits to be successful as a crankbait fisherman. So I can't be tied to one bait. but I want to create something that I truly feel like is better than anything else on the market. I want
Right.
premium hooks. I want premium paint jobs. It's not going to be the cheapest bait on the market because I want it to be a premium package. And that's where we fell with this bait. We didn't skimp on anything. Every component to this crankbait is absolutely premium, making it right up there. I mean, I'm not afraid to tell you that it is more on the high end of what a crankbait costs. But because of our premium finishes and not having to buy necessarily custom PWCs, we're coming out with a lot more colors this year too. That makes it where, you might be paying $14 for a custom crankbait. Well, I'm $12, but I have the same finish as what a lot of the custom baits are. So that's kind of a nice feature there. But I wanted this bait to be something that when you put it in your tackle box, you're going to catch a ton of fish on it. It's not going to be catch 7, 8, 9 fish and throw the thing away. It's something
Yep.
you're going to have for a very long time.
Yep. And you kind of beat me to it because I was going to say, you talk about how it's on like the premium end of crankbaits. And I guess for a stock crankbait, it would be on the premium end. But those crankbaits have color pattern. It's not just like a white pearl base with, some colors splattered on. A lot of those colors, and we'll throw a picture through the episode because we've got all 20 colors here at the shop. And a lot of those colors are custom colors.
Yeah.
So they're on the high end for a stock crankbait, but you're getting premium hooks. You're getting the good split ring at the front. You're getting premium paint jobs where, I mean, custom painted bandits, the ones we sell in the store, go anywhere from $11.99 to $12.99, which is right where yours sells.
Right.
You see a lot of them in bigger box stores, $17, $18 for a custom crankbait. Unfortunately, that's the way our industry's heading. It is getting a little pricey, but you get what you pay for. And I think that's important to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had to start somewhere. This is the first year with this bait that's been on the market for a little less than a year now. So we had to start somewhere with the color base. Don't quote me on the number, but it's like 18 new colors this year we're coming out with. So we will have more colors. We've teamed up with JT. We're getting a lot of colors that you guys already love. You guys already fish. I'm not reinventing the color wheel here. We know what we like, and I want to add on to that. So we're adding more colors to the PWC, but we're staying at that same price point. The other thing that we're doing with this bait this year is we're coming out with clears. And basically, there'll be a full clear bait, and there'll be a full, basically white bait. And so then custom guys that want to paint on these baits can do that. Nice thing is we'll be shipping them right from the factory with no hooks on them. The hooks will be in the package. The split rings are off. They're ready to rock and roll. They'll basically take them, tape up your bill, and paint them for all you custom guys out there. Put your hooks on, put them right back in the package, and you can sell them if you're selling them, or if you want to put them in your tackle box, fish with them.
Man, I like that. The packaging is super nice on them. I believe it or not, I'm unprepared. I don't have one right here, but the packaging on them is nice for those custom guys. They won't have to deal with like re-gluing, retaping,
Right.
Type deal. But it's because you already have there's already a straight chrome, so you're just adding those to the market for those custom guys.
Exactly. If you want a clear base bait and you don't want that chrome on there and you want to do a painted finish or something like that, maybe. One thing that we came out with last year, if you look at the entire line of them, the majority of the baits we came out color-wise are metallic finish because
Yes.
both my dad and I are biased on that. We love metallic finished baits, right? But there are absolutely applications for a straight painted finish where you don't have that shine. And so there's times that I want a painted finish. Again, we had to start somewhere, right?
Yep.
Maybe I would say maybe the only bait we have in the lineup that isn't a metallic finish is this one right here. I've caught a ton of fish on this bait. It's been a great color for me this year.
It's a great bait.
But the majority of our baits have that shiny metallic finish to them. And so, like I said, we had to start somewhere. We had to get baits out on the market. We had to see how this was going to even be received. I'm very happy with how many baits that have sold this year. We didn't know what was going to happen. At our ICAST meeting this year, Bill Lewis had said it was the #1 selling bait for them in the Bill Lewis line. As guys like my dad and I, we hear that and we're like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what we wanted to hear because this was our baby from the ground up. I think there were 7 or 8 different versions of this bait. That's what I want to stress with the PWC is this wasn't a bait that we said, let's get into the crankbait market, go to China, build a bait, bring it back. Okay, we have a crankbait. Every step of the way with this bait, we looked at, we changed from the rattles to the bait, to the components of the bait, the weight and how things change, like just changing out the hooks, how much that makes a difference in the action of the bait. So we wanted to make sure that this bait was ready to go right out of the package, tuned every single time. You take any one of these baits out of the package, you put them in the water, they're ready to fish. And that's, I feel like, is what's separating the PWC. Yes, it's a little bit more money. You're getting what you pay for.
Hey, spot on, man. Being in the retail business now and like in the tackle shop side of things is like, I mean, I'm not even kidding. Everything's going up. I mean, obviously you know it, but like for the viewers out there, everything is going up. Whether it's the paint you put on the bait, the hooks you put on the bait, the split rings you put on the bait, the labor that it takes to make the bait. So, I mean, that's just the way it's going. But real quick, because I'm the nerd in me is ready to just dive into this bait. But I want to give people who might not know, or people that are big fans of the show, real quick, we'll touch on that. So you guys have been doing your dad started 411, correct?
Correct.
And he's been doing it for a while now. So um how long has it been since you've kind of jumped in? And also the second part of that question, did you know growing up this is something that you always wanted to do, or was it something like, you know, this is pretty fun as you went on? Kind of talk to us about that.
Yeah, I'll give you just kind of a quick overview of Fishing 411 TV. We're shooting season 18 right now. So I'm 28 years old, so as long as I can remember, basically we've been shooting TV. Started right around 2007, 2006, somewhere in there. My dad's background is he was a writer and he wrote for a ton of different publications. And at that time, he made a really good living for himself writing. But as magazines started to decline, he knew that he was going to have to step into a different realm, right? And that's where media, digital media came in. And basically what had happened is Mike Avery, I don't know if you know Mike Avery or not, another Michigan guy.
Oh yeah, done a few podcasts with Mike.
Yeah, Mike's awesome. We love Mike. Mike was actually doing a hunting show at the time. I came to my dad. Again, I was just a kid, but he basically said he wanted to do a fishing show, and he wanted my dad to host that show. So the first year of Fishing 411, we actually ran it under with Mike Avery, producing the show. And Mike decided he wanted to get out of television altogether. He wanted to do his radio show. He wanted to do podcasts, and that was the direction he wanted to go. And so he basically gifted our family Fishing 411. He said, you guys did a great job this year. Love the show. You guys, if you want to keep going with it, here's the tools to keep going with it. If you don't, then Fishing 411 goes away. Of course, we wanted to keep going with it, and here we are now 18 years later still doing it. So I owe a lot to Mike. I have a lot of respect for that man, and he's honestly the reason why we're sitting here today.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to be giving Mike a random shout out, but shout out to Mike Avery.
Yeah.
No, Mike's a cool guy, man. I've done a couple Polarcraft podcasts with him. I've been on his show, on the radio show. He's one of those guys that, like, we're a little younger, so we can really appreciate it. But Mike's one of those guys, he'll go out of your way, or he'll go out of his way to help you out. Like when I was first getting that, I mean, I have so much respect for you guys, you and your dad, because one of the first fishing shows, I talked about it on here, but one of the first fishing shows I've ever done was in your guys' booth with Offshore Tackle in the 411 booth. And just kind of watching how you guys handled customers, because obviously dealing with the public is an animal.
Right.
And just watching how you guys dealt with all the different questions and all the different compliments and guys coming in, oh, you could do this a little different. And, they don't know what's going on the backside of things, but just watching, I guess, how to be a professional in the industry was so cool. I mean, it did a lot for me to be able to kind of take that in. And then, like you said, so getting to hear that it came down from Mike, that's really, really cool, man.
It was really neat. And for me personally, like when you're in elementary school and your teacher says, what do you want to do for a living? And you say, I want to be like my dad. I just never grew up. I wanted to fish for a living my entire life. I wanted to be in the outdoor industry since the time I was in kindergarten. This is all I wanted to do. So when I came out of high school, I did some college classes, went out to Wisconsin and took just some business management type classes and came back knowing that I was going to hit the ground running, working with Fishing 411, working for my family. Since then, I work with Fishing 411. We also work for Smokercraft Incorporated, producing all of their standalone videos for their websites and everything that they do for boat shows. So it's been kind of a combination between the two. It's been keeping me plenty busy, probably busier than I need to be, honestly.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, this is exactly what I wanted to do. We were just talking before this, and like next month I'll be home 4 days. I'll be on the road basically the entire month, right? Month of August. 4 days I'll be actually at my house. That's a lot of time on the road. That's a sacrifice that we make for being able to do this for a living. Like, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it is time away from the family.
Yeah. And you've got the precision trolling app going on. So you guys are constantly testing baits and stuff like that. Like, It really does. It never ends. And you know, you've got a wife and you've got a young kid. So it's like you've got to try and manage that time, but to be able to be successful at what you do and to be able to be good at what you do, sometimes your time management is a little skewed. It's got
Yeah,
to be.
100%. It is. And I mean, you got to have time on the water. I can't be standing here telling people how to do something if I don't be on the water, actually do these things, and be comfortable with what I'm teaching. And so at the end of the day, it's a lot of days on the water, it's a lot of days on the road. And it's fun though. I mean, my wife, she is an absolute superstar. She gets it. We dated for 6 or 7 years before we got married, and my lifestyle has been this from day one. So she knows what it's like. She totally gets it. And, you know, she supports the family. We got another little one on the way. I got a little one at home right now.
Hey, congratulations,
Thank you
man.
very much. But it's fun. And in my little boy right now, he loves it. Loves everything to do with fishing. Loves everything to do with hunting. I've always kept hunting separate from everything. It's my getaway. It's the only opportunity that I have that I don't have a camera in my face and we're not promoting it. But I do a lot of hunting and I do a lot of fishing, and that little boy is just obsessed with it.
I love that you guys keep hunting separate because like I know your dad's been working a lot with Annie. That's his dog, and as much as he talks about like personal, as much as he talks about hunting and the dog, and as much as you love hunting, you never see it on TV. You
Right.
never see it on the 411 channels, and I do love that because you have to have a getaway. Because well, when I asked you to do this, you told me about your schedule in August, and it was kind of like okay, we have to do it right now.
Right.
And it was funny because I sent you the text. Isn't it fun fishing for a living?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you hear it from people. I hear it from people all the time. Oh, it must be fun fishing for a living or being in the bait shop for a living. Yeah, it is fun. I literally wouldn't trade it for the world, but there's a lot of problems.
There is. I mean, you take the good with the bad, and you just kind of keep rolling with it.
No doubt, man. No doubt. So, guys, if you want to see more on Fishing 411, if you want to see more about what Jake and Mark have built and kind of what they've got going on, you can see it in the background there on Jake's screen. But go to YouTube, Fishing 411. Jake, you can also catch it on a couple TV channels and some apps, correct?
There are on a ton. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, Pete, was that we sat down with Sportsman's Group at ICAST, which is where we do our national broadcast. Is the Sportsman's Channel and the World Fishing Network. So
Yes.
that's our national home, right? That's what kind of puts us to our big numbers. And one of the things they said that I loved, because it's totally true. I keep hearing guys say that TV is dying. That's not
Mm-hmm.
true at all. TV is changing. And that's the best way to put it. It's just changing, right? From going to the old school cable to more of these on-demand streaming. Sportsman's Group is doing an incredible job. If I was smart and I was prepared, I could have a list of everything that they're streaming on. But there
That's
is
on me.
literally a time. I mean, there's like 30 or 40 different streaming platforms that Sportsman's Group is streaming on right now. We're also on Outdoor America, which is kind of cool. Like if you can see behind me, I got the TV there. If you have a Samsung TV that's a smart TV, you get Outdoor America for free. There's a ton of hunting and fishing shows on there. It's one of those things that like literally, if you got the Samsung TV at your home and you have internet hooked up to your home, you can watch Fishing 411 for free there. And then if all else fails, if you can't watch it on Sportsman's Channel, you can't watch it on World Fishing Network, you can't watch it on Friendly or any of the other streaming platforms, you can always go to YouTube and watch it. So we try to put it out there as many places as you can possibly see it.
Yeah, man, that's the best way to do it. And that's also on me. I had the note here too. I was like, make sure I get all the streaming because there is a lot. Like just with the Sportsman's Channel and World Fishing Network alone, it's pretty easy to get a hold of you guys. And like we said, if you can't find them and you don't have access to any of those, or you're just love to YouTube or whatever the deal is, check below. There's going to be a link below that's going to go to episode 4 from season 17. That's correct, right?
Yeah,
And that's creating a crankbait.
that would be the one on the PWC. And the other one too, and I don't want to forget this one because it's been really good. It's relatively new for us, but the Sportsman's Channel Canada has been out for about a year and a half. Really good Canadian distribution too. So anybody from home that's sitting there in Ontario and wants to watch the show, that's another really good way to see it too. Is Sportsman's Channel Canada. There's really good distribution there. So what I'll do, Pete, is I will email you right after this. I'll send you a list of all the different streamings of where 411's at, so you can throw that up there if you want to do that.
Yeah, please do. And then at the end of the video, what I'll do is I'll just put a screenshot of everywhere that you can watch it, everywhere that you can stream it, and then also watch it as the episodes come out, like when it's in season. We do have a lot of being where we're at. We have a lot of Canadian friends of the shop.
Right. Right.
And we got to take care of those guys over there in Ontario, man. I mean, I can throw a stone to them across the river right here. So we got to make sure that we take care of our
I didn't want to
Ontario
forget
friends.
about it because God bless it. I love Ontario. We go there all the time fishing, and I don't want to forget about those boys because they have incredible fishing, and they're right there. I mean, they're literally, like you said, throw a stone and you're there. So
Yeah, they probably got better fishing than we do on this river.
yeah, probably across the board, everywhere we go.
Yeah,
Like it's
realistically. But let's dive into a little bit. I brought it up. So if you want to go directly to what we're talking about now, it's season 17, episode 4. And that's creating the crankbait that I really want to touch on. I've I'm such a nerd when it comes to fishing. I love, right now we're pouring our own jigs and we pour and paint our own jigs and we pour our own lead and we're working on a way to get some plastics in here and the creation of tackle is so interesting to me and a lot of people from out of this industry look in and they're like, oh, you just throw a fake fish with some hooks down there.
right.
And I don't think they realize how much math and how much testing and how much goes into engineering a bait. So why don't you fill us in a little bit on what this process has been like creating this precise walleye crank?
Yeah.
Because
So basically, start to finish on this bait took 3 years to develop. And the reason it took so long is because my dad and I are picky. We wanted this one right. We weren't going to put our names on something that doesn't work. And at the end of the
right,
day, I want someone to be able to put this bait in the water and go catch fish and be successful. Fishing 4-on-1 as a TV show has always been about information and teaching people. I don't hold anything back. If I learn something that's new, I show it, I teach it, I try to help people out. Because at the end of the day, if we're not going out on the water catching fish, me, you, everybody else, if you're not successful, you become a golfer or you do something else, right? You
mm-hmm,
move on from the fishing world. You might buy your boat, buy some tackle, go out there, and if you're not successful and having fun, you sell the boat, you sell your tackle, and you go on and you do something else. You golf or whatever it is. I don't want that. I want you fishing. I want you having fun. I want you out there on the water and catching as many fish as possible. And so 3 years to develop this bait, a lot of different versions of it. And basically, the starting process is a lot different than the old days. Back in the old days, they would literally take a piece of wood and carve it down into the shape of what they were looking for. They would take a bill, they would glue it in there, they would run it. Uh, Technology's come a long ways. And as far as it goes, we were able to start with a CAD drawing of what we wanted the bait to look like. From there, they were able to 3D print that bait. So one of the disadvantages of 3D printing is one, it's the wrong type of plastic. They can't use the same plastic as what a finished version of the bait is. Two, your rattles are not going to make the same type of noise in that type of plastic. So, but what it does is it gives us a really good baseline of how the bait's going to run, what kind of changes we want to make to that. So then from there, we try a lot of different versions. And at the end of the day, they told us like these prototypes are giving us our $1,500 prototypes. They said, don't break them. I understand why. It's an expensive process, right? But basically, we'll put these baits in the water and we look at the action. Now, the advantage I think that what my dad and I have with owning precision trolling is there is not a crankbait on the market that we haven't put in the water, that we haven't looked at, that we haven't had a diver do the dive profile of it, figure out where the depth is. We know what baits work. We know what baits, the actions that we're looking for. What's crazy to me is when you put a crankbait in the water and you watch that bait, you can put another bait side by side and they look identical. But then you shoot them on video in super slow motion and you really start to break apart the action of those baits. All of a sudden, the bait that looks really close, when you slow them down, they're doing completely different. And so we're breaking it down by filming these baits underwater, slowing them down, really breaking down the actions. And then, let's look at that with the PWC. What's the most popular crankbaits on the market right now in the Great Lakes? It would be the Husky Jerk. It would be the Bandit. It would be the original version of the Reef Runner before things changed, right? All of these things were kind of staple crankbaits. These baits were staple crankbaits in our market. And I'm not reinventing the wheel. What I wanted to do is let's break it down. The 800 series Reef Runner, great crankbait. But in my opinion, it's a bait that when it hit about 50 degrees in water temp, it just doesn't work anymore. It has too much action. It's that 50 to 60 degree range is where that bait really shines. It gets deep quickly, but it has a lot of action. And what I mean by action on baits is that you have two different types of actions with a crankbait. You have the roll, which the bait's rolling like this, but then you have this side to side action, right? And
Mhm.
so the Reef Runner has a lot of roll and a lot of side to side action. Works good when the water's warmer. But as that water gets colder for walleye, they want less action, and that bait just doesn't slow down and have the right action at slow speeds. So now all of a sudden, as good as that 800 series reef runner is, I'd kick it out for when it comes to cold water fishing. So then you have the Husky Jerk and you have the Bandit. Both are really good baits. The Bandit's a very loud rattle. That's what I wanted to do with the PWC. I wanted that very loud rattle. This has got a loud rattle chamber in it.
You can hear it.
Yeah, so I knew that the Bandit was loud. I wanted to have a loud bait with the PWC. The Husky Jerk and the Bandit alike are two very similar baits in the factor that they fish well at slow speeds and they also fish well at fast speeds. Not very many crankbaits on the market do that. They have a speed zone that works good. And I've caught fish now with the PWC slower than a mile an hour. I've caught fish with the PWC over 3.5 miles an hour. That's what we were trying to hit, is a bait that when the water's ice cold, I can barely move and still have that right action. But as I speed up, the action picks up and I can cover more water, water's warmer, and gives the right action a little bit warmer water. So this bait does a really good job of catching those ice cold fish. This last year I was on Saginaw Bay and we were breaking ice to get out and catching fish with this bait. So you can't get any colder water. The water was literally 33 degrees. And we were still catching fish on PWCs. And then in the summer, we could go out right now and catch fish on PWCs. So it's a type of bait that works really well year-round. But in my opinion, and you see this is a pretty big profile bait.
Yep.
That's what we were looking for, is that minnow-style, bigger profile bait. There's times a year where I just personally don't like a bigger profile bait. I like a smaller bait. In the spring and in the fall, we're dealing with big bait fish. In the summertime, we're dealing with small bait fish. And so a lot of times we'll tend to fish a little bit smaller bait for that. And so I'll get to that in a second. We're working on actually a smaller one right now. But to be the first time I've showed anybody the bait, which is going to be fun. But
ooh,
yeah, right?
Hell yeah!
I like showing it. We're really close. It'll be a next year product, but it's ready to be casted to a mold. So with the PWC, after we get these different 3D printed versions and we get really close, a lot of different versions of them, changing things from like the size of the hooks. Here's another thing that's different on a PWC. You see it only has the 2 hooks. Personally, I only wanted 2 hooks. My dad only wanted 2 hooks. I don't feel like that third belly hook does a lot as far as hooking up fish. We went to oversized hooks, a bigger profile hook. And this is not a sales gimmick. The amount of fish that just doesn't simply come off. If you hook a fish on a PWC, I've lost very, very few fish on this bait because of the oversized hooks.
Yeah.
The other thing with the 2 hooks, I can get it out of the landing net faster. I can get that fish in the box, and I can go ahead and get that bait out quicker. For me, that third hook just always got tangled in everything, and it didn't necessarily feel like I was getting a higher hookup percentage. Right. The other thing, whenever we're testing any type of a crankbait, is that I look at how these fish are eating the bait. And you'll see from that episode that you were talking about, Pete, and the thousands of other times now we've fished this bait, that the majority of our fish come on this front hook, which is very different. Most of the fish you catch on a crankbait, they come on that back hook. And the reason why is at the end of the day, it's a chunk of plastic, right? Like we're trying to fool fish with a chunk of plastic. Yep. So what happens is these fish, they see it, they kind of like it, they might swat at it, they get that back hook. But these fish that we're catching on the PWC are absolutely T-boning this bait. A walleye will eat all of its bait fish head first, right? That's the way that they eat everything. So when you start seeing these crankbaits coming into the boat and these baits are literally T-boning, these fish are hooked on this front hook, you know you 100% fooled that fish. That fish was planning on digesting that bait. It didn't realize it was a piece of plastic. Yeah. So that's where I feel like we really hit it. Really high quality hooks all the way through the components of the bait, even things like the eye tie. You start looking at other crankbaits on the market, and I know this because we've handled so many different ones. You'll see cheap components like within the eye tie of the bait. That's the whole point of this crankbait right here, is one of the reasons that it gives the bait the action, but it also is the reason why it gives it the depth. It also keeps it tuned, keeping the bait perfectly running straight.
Yes.
And so that eye tie right there is made with high quality components, and it's a heavy duty eye tie, meaning that when you catch a fish and it's in the net and it's thrashing around and you pull this bait back out, it's most likely not going to tweak that eye tie. It can happen just like with any other crankbait, but because it's such a heavy duty wire, it stays tuned even after catching fish after fish after fish. And a lot of baits I fish, I tune them after every single fish because that wire's too thin. And when you catch that fish, it tweaks the bait. You got to retune it before you put it back out. And every time I put a crankbait in the water, I kind of pull it in the water along the side of the boat. And if that bait is not diving perfectly straight in the water, it's not tuned. If it's going off to the right, you got to bend the eye tie back to the left. If it's going off to the left, you got to bend the eye tie back to the right. And so it's very important not only for getting the max diving depth, but to get the right action. If the bait's not tuned correctly and it's on its side rolling, you're not getting the action of what that bait was intended for. So we wanted a bait, heavy duty components with the eye tie, heavy duty quality hooks. That's my biggest pet peeve with crankbaits is when you buy a crankbait and then have to replace the hooks out to be able to have actually hook a fish with them. We wanted this to be a package that when you pull it out, put it on, it's ready to fish right out of the box.
And what's the difference if you buy a Bandit for $7.99 or say a Husky? I don't want to single out Bandits. I mean, I use a ton of them, but what's the difference if you buy a stock bait at $7.99, $8.99, and then you got to buy a $4 bag of hooks? You're back at $12 for a bait, and you got to put the work into it. You know what I mean?
I'm not bashing Bandit. I want to make sure that we put that. I'm not bashing Bandit in any way. I have thousands of them. I fish them all the time. It's a great.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, there is no such thing as one crankbait that's going to do it all. I'm never going to stand up here and be like, this is the bait you need in your box. Don't buy another crankbait ever again. That's not true. Crankbait fishermen, good crankbait fishermen, have them all in their boat. And there's different times and different weather conditions or whatever it is that works. But if I had to make a list of the baits that I always have in my boat, I always have Bandits in my boat. I always have Husky Jerks, number 12 deep Husky Jerks in my boat.
Yep.
I always have Reef Runners in my boat. You know, and I always have PWCs in my boat. We're creating just another tool to catch more fish.
And that was the thing. That's the thing that I really wanted to do this episode. So we got our hands on the PWCs. We were one of the first few to get our. I think it was us, Erie Outfitters, and Frank's. Were one of the first few to get them, and we were the only one in Novi to have all 20 colors. We worked closely with the distributing company that got their hands on those. And I was like, listen, dude, I need those. Like, if there's a new bait coming to the market, I knew you guys had a big say in how it was done and how it was built. I know how you guys can be as far as like picky and making sure that it's going to be the right thing. And so I knew that I had to get my hands on those baits. So we had all 20 colors at the show. We still got them here at the shop because I made sure to get a bunch of them. I've spent a lot of time with that bait in my hand looking at. I mean, we fished it, put fish in the boat on them, but I've spent a lot of time with that bait in my hand. And I can second everything you're saying. You can, if you look at the bait, you can tell that you guys took a lot of time in making this bait different, trying to make it the best crankbait on the market. And so what's some things that you've noticed running this bait? Like what, obviously being tuned is number one, but what have you noticed running this bait that helps it run so true, that makes it catch fish, I guess? Layman's terms.
You know, yeah, absolutely. And what's one of the things, obviously, is we used to always preach that color was secondary. Color is very important. I think the more that we get into these developing of baits, the color of the baits, the profile of the bait is important. But the color, that metallic finish, I obviously love these metallic finishes.
Yes.
But having these different colors goes a long ways. But at the end of the day, the bait has to be doing the right thing before all of that. So when you're looking at like a crankbait development, some of the most important things that we look at are the lip that dictates the action, the pull point dictates the action, the hooks themselves dictate the action. What's crazy is I could take this bait right now and put smaller hooks on it. It's not right anymore. Like the weight of these hooks make the action of this bait. So all the way down to, and we preach that when guys want to replace their hooks out, to just pay attention to that because you know, if a bait was truly developed from the ground up, they developed it with the hooks. If you look at, like, we'll use Yakima Bait Company, for instance, the maglet crankbait. Those are two different sized hooks on that 3.5 maglet. They're not the same size. And a lot of people don't realize that. And it's right down to, it took that weight distribution of a little bit different size hooks to get that action correct with that bait. So every bait's a little bit different. The size of the hooks are, in my opinion, important because it really helps for that action. But all the way down to the components. Now, the eye tie is how it's molded in and everything makes a big difference in how the bait runs too. So, like I said, from start to finish with this bait, we wanted it to be able to work at slow speeds, right down to barely moving, which drives me nuts, but that's what we do in the fall is we go slow, but right down to even below a mile an hour, and then speeding this bait up. I can pull this bait over 4 miles an hour and it doesn't blow out. Now, a lot of baits, as you start going fast, it loses its bite and the bait will actually blow out and be skipping on the surface. But this bait will hold its depth even at fast speeds.
Yeah, so what goes in now? I don't want to talk about it too soon. The new product is coming up. You're going through the new product right now. What is the testing process? Like they just hand you a chunk of plastic. So obviously it's all drawn out, it's all engineered, but they just hand you a chunk of plastic with hooks and say, what do you like and what do you not like about it? And then you go from there. I mean, 3 years is a long time, man.
A long time. And this new bait that I'm going to show pretty soon has not taken 3 years. We're getting a little bit better with the development stage. We know what worked with the PWC. Okay, so we know what worked with this bait, and we can use that for the next bait that we're coming out with. We can use that knowledge. And I didn't have that knowledge before when we started this bait. We started from the ground up and we learned as we went. We took the knowledge of what we knew from crankbaits, but I didn't necessarily know exactly what it took to truly develop a crankbait from the ground up. There's a lot of difference between fishing baits all the time and developing baits. And so we had a little bit of a learning curve there. But once we figured that out and spent some time learning that, now this new bait that we're coming out with that I'll show pretty soon is kind of a baby version of this bait. We were able to figure that out. So the actions and everything. Now, you're right. It's kind of crude in the fact that they're going to send, they draw up a 3D, like a CAD drawing of it. Then they do a 3D print of the bait. Then they send it to us. We put it in the water and we look at it. And I look at the action. I know what I'm trying to hit because I know what I want for the action. Now, again, with this bait, if I had to take 3 baits, we married the 800 series Reef Runner to the Bandit to the Husky Jerk. We took characteristics of those 3 baits that I liked and we married it into one bait. So there was things I was looking for with each bait that we liked that I wanted to make sure this bait was. And so we look at the action, didn't like it. Then we send it back, they make us a new version. We look at it, nope, you didn't hit it, we're still not there. Then they make us another version, we look at it and we go, okay, we're getting closer, but it's still not right, but I'm going to put this bait in the water more. I'm going to spend some time with it. Then we get another version, we put that in the bait. Okay, I think the action's right. Now cast me a mold of this bait because now everything changes. So once the mold's casted, now we're going to change with the way that the rattles are with the plastic and make sure that works. Now we have a mold casted, but a small mold, basically not a mass-produced mold, just enough to create a few baits. Then it's time to start fishing the baits, and we start putting them in the water in a fishing situation where we start catching fish on them. Then again, we start to change. Now, even from this PWC, this is a factory bait right here.
Yeah.
What we had on a lot of our prototypes, we were writing on the bills. We had high-pitch rattles, we had low-pitch rattles, we had different numbers of BBs within the bait. All of these things we had laid out, wrote on the bait, and we just started fishing them. Took the Lake Erie and just started sorting through a lot of fish, figured out which one just simply produced the most often. Once we started having a bait that's like, you know what, this is the one that just shines every day compared to the other versions, that's when we felt like, okay, we had a bait. So then we took that bait, they took that mold, and then they made a bigger mold so they could be able to mass produce the bait. Then we have a big mold. We have a lot of money invested into this bait. They sent it back to us, and we prayed that it was identical to the original mold and that everything was good. We put the bait in the water, started catching a pile of fish on it, and that's when we knew, okay, it's ready to put out to the world, and they started mass producing them. So from start to finish, that process took 3 years.
And you have, from the way I understood that, you have months, even a year into testing that bait before you even let a fish decide if it wants to eat it.
Right.
So that's what I was, because I was kind of leaning into that. Like, how much do you decide? How much do you like? And then how much do you let the fish decide? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of lures out there that catch us.
Right. The fish.
So like how?
Yeah, if the fish don't eat it, it's a worthless bait. So we can take the knowledge that we know, right? And we can say, okay, I think this is the right action. We had versions of this PWC that my dad and I were like, yep, that's it. That's the right action. And it worked okay. We caught fish on it, but we didn't feel like it was better than anything else that's on the market, right? And so then we went back to the drawing board. We started over again. So just because we think it looks good doesn't necessarily mean the fish think it looks good. We have a pretty good idea what the fish want, but not right down to the absolute inch of the wobble. So that's why the reason my dad and I were so confident when we released this bait, the guys were going to love this crankbait, is we literally caught hundreds, if not thousands of fish on the PWC before a customer ever got this bait in their hand. But we were very confident in catching so many fish with this bait that someone was going to tie it on and catch fish with it.
Yeah, and you know that's what really sold me. Talking to Jeff, the distributor, talking to Jeff, and because he came to me and he's like, hey, you know, I know you're buying a bunch of our bandits right now. We buy a bunch of the JT bandits through them. He's like, I know you're buying a bunch of bandits. you really need to look at this bait. Explain it to me. He gave me the same kind of spiel you did, and I was in. And I was in for a few reasons. Now, one reason that I really like that bait is you guys truly did start from the ground and start from scratch. Bill Lewis is a great company. They make great crankbaits. They make a lot of bass crankbaits.
Right.
Tell me if I'm wrong. This is the first deep diving crankbait that they created, yes?
Yeah. So Bill Lewis, you're right. It's a big company, and in fact, in the last year and a half or so, it got purchased by GSM, and
Yep.
GSM is an absolute powerhouse. Like in the hunting world, they own not half of the hunting world, but a lot of it. You know, they own a lot of brands. So they
Yep.
purchased Bill Lewis. We had started this project when Bill Lewis was an independently owned company. So we got transferred into the GSM purchase. And for a little bit, we were concerned that a bigger company buys a smaller company, they're going to just completely kill the project. The exact opposite happened. All of a sudden, now we had the funding to do this the way that we really needed to do it. And they were able
Oh.
to make sure that everything was perfect on the bait. So GSM really helped with the Bill Lewis. That relationship has been great. But Bill Lewis is a bass company. But let's look at other bass. You got to start somewhere. I say that all the time. But you got to start somewhere. Let's look at Berkeley. Do we look at Berkeley as a walleye company? Absolutely. Berkeley was a bass company not that long ago. And you
No.
look at all of the walleye crankbaits they developed over the years, and now you look at them as they're a bass company, they're a walleye company, they're a multi-species company. Berkeley's a powerhouse.
Yep.
That's what we're going to do with Bill Lewis. They're a powerhouse in the bass world. We're going to bring a family of walleye baits to Bill Lewis and allow them to produce them because they produce high quality stuff. Everything's
Oh,
high quality. We're going to do the same thing with the walleye side.
so the reason that I like that bait is because the Bill Lewis company and you guys really designed, they didn't have any preconceived ideas or any preconceived notions like this is what works, this is the way we want to do it. So we'll take what you're saying, but we want to do this.
Right.
It was from the ground up. Like this is what we want to do. And going in tied with that, you guys do the precision walleye trolling app. So for our viewers out there, for our listeners out there that aren't really sure, guys, the precision walleye or the precision trolling app is one of the greatest tools for a walleye troller. It's got any crankbait, any walleye trolling crankbait that you can possibly think about, including ones that aren't even out yet, like the deep hit sticks.
Right.
So including ones that aren't even out yet, you can get this app and it tells you the dive curve on all these baits. And Jake, you guys test these out on the boat with divers and cameras testing dive depths.
We spend a ton of hours out on the water with a diver running these baits past a tape measure that's vertical in the water. The diver's reading it right off the tape measure. It's extremely boring. I'm not afraid to tell people that. Like, we're spending 10, 12-hour days on the water knowing I'm never going to catch a fish, right? And we do it day after day after day. But the data we get is so invaluable for fishermen. It's not just crankbaits, all different diving device type things. If you're trying to figure out how much line you have to let
Right.
to get your lure down to depth, the Precision Trolling app does that for you. And we've been doing it forever. It started with a book. That was my dad started with a book. We've developed into the app. I think it's 10 plus years now we've been doing the app already. So the app's doing very, very well. The cool thing about the app versus the book, we hear guys talk about that all the time. Like, I want the book. The problem with the book is that when someone would come out with a crankbait, we would test it, and then we would do a print run when we had enough baits to do a new version of the book. And so sometimes baits would be on the market for 2-3 years before we had the information out there to guys. You said
Right.
it's the new deep hit stick. I've had that bait in the water a ton. Both my Uncle Keith and my Uncle Gary made that bait, right? So I had prototypes of that bait before they were production grade baits. I had the production grade bait, and we tested that bait before it's even available to the public. So now the beautiful thing of the app is that when you go and buy that new deep hit stick, you buy that crankbait and the data's right there ready for you, right to start, right out the gate. And that's the beautiful thing. We can get stuff out to you guys very quickly with the app.
Yeah, and so the thing is like you guys have had and I want to go back and touch on Uncle Keith and Uncle Gary because your guys' family is like walleye fishing royalty. When I put the pieces together, I was just like, "Oh my god." And I was talking to Chase at the fishing show. I was like, "That's crazy." But we'll touch on that in a second. You guys have had every single crankbait in your hand.
Yes.
And then got to take all the information that you've taken in, like you were saying, and put that into your own crankbait. That right there is the reason that I'm so excited to continue to use this bait. Because I'm a jig fisherman. I love jigging. I love casting. So my trolling season's pretty limited. Early spring, late fall. And last fall, it produced some really nice Lake St. Clair walleyes for us. This year, it got us some really nice Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie walleyes. So and some Lake St. Clair muskies because you just can't avoid them.
You can't avoid the muskies.
But, but the bait's held up, if you were wondering.
Good. Good.
But that's what I mean. Like, that's the reason that we wanted to do this show, is because the amount of information that went into that little plastic crankbait in your hands, it's insane.
Right. It is.
And why don't go ahead.
I just like we talk about the different developments of the bait. I got to give credit where credit is due. Obviously, we spent a lot of time with precision trolling with baits in our hands, right? And we've looked at the action of baits. We kind of know what's going to work. Obviously, Gary and Keith are family, right? Gary Parsons is my mom's brother. Keith and I married my mom's sister. We're all within the same family. I have a lot of respect for both of those guys, and they have taught me so much. They've taught my dad so much. There was actually a time when my dad was an outdoor writer full time. He was ghost writing for them. So all the stuff that came out from them, my dad was actually writing it. So we're all family. We all work together. And when we were developing this bait and I got hung up, I'm like, what's the next step? And I can pick up the phone and call Keith and say, what would you do here? And he helps with that. Even though they're working on a complete competitor, right? Berkeley would be a competitor to us. I don't look at it that way. Yes, this is a competitor to a Berkeley bait, 100%. But the new Berkeley bait that just came out, it's a fish catcher. It's a good bait. But it's, again, not the one bait that's going to be in your box 100% of the time, the only bait that you fish. There's no such thing as that as a crankbait fishing. You have to have a multitude of different crankbaits out there to be successful.
Yep. As much as you're going to have competition, this is something I preach all the time, especially being in the bait shop industry. Like, as much as you're going to have competition, you need to work together. Like, me and the other shops on the river, we're obviously competing for customers and trying to get prices. But the other thing is, we've all got families to feed. Right. We've all got things we've got to do, and there's enough to go around. And when you work together, you can really start, like, that is when the learning curve gets cut completely. Whether you're fishing, making baits, selling tackle, making jigs, painting jigs, when you start working together, and obviously there's stuff that goes into that, but it's just really cool to hear because, I mean, Keith Cavias and Gary Parsons, I mean, they're Berkeley staples. They're part of the Next Bite, and they have done so much. Like, you talk about a young angler looking up to them. Like, dude, I was watching the Next Bite before I was even guiding or doing any of that.
Yeah. I have so much respect for them, and I look up to them. They've taught me so much. I wouldn't really be where I am if it wasn't for my dad and those guys right there. They help mold me to who I am now as an angler.
Right. And then you also got to think from their point of view, man. Look what they got to watch. Like, they've helped you, and they've helped you guys get to this point and whatever you've needed help. But look what they've got to, they get to sit back and say, look at what you guys have done. Like, look at the work you've put in. And so not only do we have the Bill Lewis bait, the Precise Walleye Crank, why don't we talk a little bit about what's new?
Yeah, so I'm excited. This is the first time I've showed this bait to literally anybody. So
yes, dude.
Okay, so we have right here is the PWC. This is the bait that's been out for a little less than a year now that we've been talking about. And what we're coming out with is the PWC Lite. The smaller version of the PWC. It's a little bit different of an action of a bait. It's a little bit more of an aggressive action bait, but it does troll slow very well.
Right.
When we talked about, like, we were talking about the different molds. Like, this is a production grade bait right here. You see it's got a clear lip. It's ready to go. Like, that's like if you bought that in the store. This bait right here is a 3D printed bait. You see it's got a white lip. And that's what basically the 3D molds look like.
So that's done right in a 3D printer.
It's made right in their 3D printers. They take from the CAD drawing to make this bait right here. From there, we mess around with hooks. Again, we've stayed with the 2 hooks. A little bit oversized hooks for the profile bait that's there. These are number 6 hooks here. And this bait right here is ready to be casted in that first mold. Remember I said we'll make a small mold to do a run. So you can see, like, this bait doesn't have much rattle. You hear the difference of the rattle of this bait?
Whoa.
That rattle on that hard plastic, the soft plastic of the 3D printing, it just doesn't work. So we don't have the rattle yet on this bait. But we have the action right. Everything that we want for the action is there. Now, this bait has a lot of roll. When it's in the water, it rolls like this. It's got a little bit of side-to-side tail movement. If I had to marry a bait that I took that I wanted to be relatively similar to, it's a Deep Junior Thunder Stick. The original, the original Deep Junior Thunder Stick is a bait that I've caught thousands of fish on. It's just a fishy bait. And I wanted to be able to bring that type of action to the PWC light, and that's exactly what we've done here. Now, this bait won't be available until next year, so it's not going to be ready to be purchased, but I thought it'd be cool here on the podcast to talk about this new bait and kind of show it that it's ready to be cast in the mold. It's another project my dad and I are working on right now.
Well, I can promise you and the viewers and the listeners that as soon as that thing's available, I'm willing to bet it'll be in my paws. Um, they 3D print you that bait. They say, hey, this thing's worth a lot of money. Don't break it. You go out and catch a few fish on it, so you know it works.
Exactly what they say is don't break them. They're worth a lot of money. And honestly, this bait's not supposed to be in the water where there's fish. Right now, this is the stage where we're just looking at the action of the bait. Of course, the other day I'm on Lake Erie. I can't help myself. I put it down there and literally 30 seconds catch one, then catch another one, then catch another one. And my dad and I both look at each other and go, you know what? We got to take this bait out. I don't want to break it. It's a soft bait. It's not meant to have that kind of weight on it of a fish. And so before I got yelled at and we broke one of the prototypes, I pulled it out of the water. But catching 3 fish on it in a short order just is a good mindset that we're right there with the right action.
Dude, I'm stoked for that bait because that, like, smaller baits, like you said, the little thunder sticks, flicker minnow, like the smaller flicker minnows, smaller flicker shads, those dominate Lake St. Clair, especially this time of year. Fishing them over the weeds and stuff like that. I'm very, very excited to see that bait at some point in time. Maybe I'll see the prototype at the show, or whatever the situation is. But
these prototypes at the show is coming up. But again, I want it right. We're very picky. And so
100%.
I kind of went back and forth if I was going to show the bait or not, because I don't want there to be like a demand for it. And then all of a sudden, where's it at? Never comes out. It's going to come out, but it's going to be right when it comes out. And it's going to be every bit as much. I'll hang my hat on this PWC. It's the right bait. It's the right action. It's the right quality. And this new one that's coming out, you see a profile size there. It's considerably smaller. When we hit this bait on the market, it will be 100% right.
Dude, yeah, I can't wait to see it. As soon as I hang up the call, I will like plead and beg to get some testers. No. But yeah, man, that is super exciting. And obviously an exciting step for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things you can see, this is just a white lip because again, this is a 3D printed bait. But one of the things that we're bringing is the different finishes. One thing that I want to bring, my dad wanted to bring, when you look at the old original Thunder Sticks, back in the day, if you can remember the chrome lips, the red chrome, the straight chrome lips.
Yes.
That was such a fish catcher, and guys just aren't doing that anymore. And so I want this bait to have that. And so we'll have options of chrome lips. We'll have all of the same colors the PWC is in currently, plus the 18 new colors this bait will be available in. So there's going to be a lot of finishes. We're going to have options for chrome lips, not chrome lips. There'll be custom painting options for this bait. So again, one of the things that with the PWC and this bait that I want to stress for custom painters, because we get this question a lot, is we're just about ready for the PWC to be shipping them clear with the hooks just in the package loose. So the split rings and the hooks will be loose, and then you'll basically tape up the bill, paint your bait, put your hooks on, save you a lot of time as a custom painter. You don't have to take all the hooks off before you paint them to put all the hooks back on again.
Right.
Just streamline the process for these painters.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for that junior one. So you talk about how the PWC can catch, like, it's not just a walleye catcher, it catches a lot of fish. I'm really excited for that light because you talk about the thunderstick possibilities. I know how much time you guys spend in New York and in Niagara. I can't wait to get that thing out chasing cohos, Atlantics, steelhead.
One of the fish that I did catch on Erie was an 11-pound coho with this thing. So
11 pounds?
11-pound coho with this thing. I was fighting that fish going, please don't break in half. Like I said, these are not meant for fishing. They're meant for testing. But my gosh, we landed it too. So.
Oh my God. Well, we only get like 18 to 22 inch cohos around here, so I don't have to worry about that. But that bait is going to be very, very versatile. I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to the new colors, man. I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to get in trouble. But I was talking to some of the guys at JT, and the new patterns I think that are going to be on those PWCs are pretty awesome.
They're awesome. I have a box of them. They're not here in my office here, but I have a box of all the new colors, and I'm very, very excited about the new finishes this year. They're going to add to the whole lineup of the PWC, and I think it's exactly what guys are looking for.
And I'll just say it how I mean they are the custom colors. Like
Right.
they are a lot of the JT customs. They put their touch on these baits, and they're a stock bait, but you will definitely see in the package the difference between a PWC stock color and a lot of these other stock colors. You know what I mean? So that's exciting to see.
Yeah, we talked about that. What I want is custom colors that are stock colors. And guys that we've been used for years now, we've been calling them custom colors, but with the PWC, they're going to be right from the factory stock colors.
Well, and you're starting to see that. I mean, you are starting to see that all over. You're starting to see Rapala, they're starting to come out with a lot of like different looking baits, like custom colors. Even Bandit, they're starting to put them on their prison baits and stuff like that. So what happens is you get one company or one person kind of push the envelope, push the bar. It forces these other companies to kind of go and do it. So regardless of who started it or who's doing it, you are going to start seeing, or we are going to start seeing it happen, where we're getting those more complex patterns on the stock bait. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so we've talked about the PWC, we've talked about the prototype. You guys have more stuff coming out. Talk to us a little bit about what you guys have been creating, and where you're at. When are we going to be able to see these new rods on the market?
Yep.
What gave you the idea? I mean, talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, we'll start with basically, I'll kind of go through them. There's a lineup of new trolling rods that my dad and I developed for Eagle Claw. And the way that happened is Eagle Claw came to us and they said, would you develop a line of trolling rods for us? Absolutely. We would love to. It would be a fun project to be a part of. And so we started from the ground up. We basically built these rods. But what we did is, if you can remember back in the day, remember the Starfire series from Eagle Claw, the yellow rods?
Oh, yeah.
They were everywhere.
I have two upstairs.
I still fish them to this day. They were cheap rods. They were bulletproof rods. And they were a rod that if you didn't have a lot of money, you could still buy them, go fishing. Great. That's what the whole point of the Starfire line was. We wanted to do that again, but nothing against the ugly yellow, but that's exactly what the Starfire was. It was those ugly yellow rods. We wanted a rod that looked good. We wanted it to look like a professional rod. We wanted a rod that had features that professional rods have. We wanted a rod that was durable, but after all of that, I wanted a rod that was reasonably priced. Because when it comes to trolling, it's not a sensitivity thing. I don't need to feel that bite through the rod tip. I need a rod that when I catch a fish and throw that rod on the floor, I don't have to worry about it breaking. And so what we were looking at is basically building a composite rod. And it's a composite of graphite and fiberglass. The fiberglass is what gives it the strength. The composite still gives you a little bit of the lightness, or the actual graphite carbon gives you that lightness of the rod. So it's a combination of the two. And I have some rods here. Like this one right here we have two planer board rods.
Yep.
Basically a 7.5 foot medium moderate type action rod and an 8.5 foot. I personally like a 7.5 foot trolling rod. What I primarily troll is a little bit shorter. I think traditionally more 8.5 foot is what a lot of guys have used for years and years and years. The way I look at it is that if I'm fishing a planer board and sending it out to the side, I don't need a really long rod to get the line out to the side. That's what my planer board is doing. And I'm constantly reaching up to the top of the rod to grab the line to hook up a planer board, and I don't want to have to choke up on that rod to be able to reach the top. I'm pretty tall, I'm over 6 foot, so I can reach up and grab that with a 7.5 foot rod, no problem, without choking up on the rod. In my opinion, when you choke up on a rod, all you're doing is asking your buddy to accidentally step on it and break the butt of the rod. So I like a 7.5, but enough guys like the 8.5 foot rod that we came out with both. And one of the things with this entire series through the Starfire X is we wanted to make this where there wasn't a ton of actions. Because at the end of the day for trollers, there's only a handful of rods that we fish. They got to be the right action, but I don't need a million different lengths and a million different sizes. So this is that medium to moderate type action with the trolling rods. Again, 7.5 and 8.5 foot. The other thing that we add, you can see, it's just a pretty rod, right? Like the entire rod just looks professional. It doesn't look cheap in any way.
Right.
But then, in fact, here's what I'm going to do. We got a storm rolling in here, Pete. So I'm gonna turn my light on really quick.
Okay.
It's getting dark.
Oh God. I think that storm's coming this way.
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be pretty nasty today, but it's getting dark
Oh.
outside. It's darker in the office, but maybe you can see on the video.
Oh, that's way better. Yeah, that's way better.
So it's just a really pretty professional looking rod. And again, all of these rods within the whole series are going to fall between $40 and $60 retail. So as far as I'm concerned, we hit it right there. We hit a quality rod that's not an expensive rod.
Oh, yeah, you nailed it. So
Well,
you've got the oh go I'm sorry, keep going.
what I've preached 1,000 times in trolling rods is don't spend the money on the rod, spend the money on the reel. You get what you pay for with the reel, right? No matter what brand it is, doesn't matter what brand your reel is, but when you're looking at line counter reels, spend the money on the reel. Try to get a reasonably priced rod. You'll be better off in the long run. So that's where we have, like I said, we have two of these sizes. The other thing that we came out with, or coming out with, is a technique-specific bottom bouncer rod that's also telescoping. So it's an 8.5 foot rod. It's got the perfect parabolic bend that we're looking for with a bottom bouncer rod.
Yep.
The fact that it's telescoping, all of these rods that are telescoping, is all because we're fishing out of 16 to 20 foot boats. Not a lot of places to store them. I need these rods to fit in my rod locker. An 8.5 foot rod isn't going to fit in most rod lockers, and so I want it telescoping so it fits inside there. But it's got the perfect action. We've caught a lot of fish on this bottom bouncer rod this year. A little bit of a cork where it's in your hand. So for our Minnesota friends that are holding onto their bottom bouncers, or if you're in the river and you're holding onto a bottom bouncer, it's just a little bit more comfortable in your hand with that little piece of cork right there. Got the trigger grip on there, so it's comfortable in your hand. But it's just a nice lightweight rod, super durable, and it's got the right action. Then the next one, this is just it's nothing really special. This is where we needed it in the lineup. This is a downrigger rod. And so this is a 2-piece, 8-foot downrigger rod. There's a ton of them like that on the market, but it needed to be in the lineup. As far as I was concerned, we use a lot of downriggers. It's got a nice light action. A lot of downrigger rods I think are too stiff. I like to load that rod right up when I'm downrigger fishing, and so I can see those small bites. Like if I'm fishing Lake Huron, I need to be able to see it when a king bites. Not hard, everyone can see that, but I need to be able to see it when pink salmon bites too, right? So
Right.
nice light action allows you to see that in the rod tip. So again, this is just a 2-piece, very, very, very traditional 8-foot downrigger rod, but same thing, nice pretty look to it. We got a nice professional look on all of these rods.
Yeah, they look really when Tony's for you guys that don't know, Tony's our Eagle Claw rep. We praise Tony. We love Tony. He came in and told me, he's like, "Hey, we got some new Starfire rods coming out." And like I said, I have 2 of them upstairs. I'm like, "Tony, dude, I don't know. Like I got to try it." He goes, "No, no, 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 no. They're totally redesigned. The guys from 411." And then I saw I saw the 411 make a post. It was like the day after that, and I was like, "Oh, Tony wasn't kidding. Like they really clean these things up."
Yeah, yeah. It's not your grandpa's Starfire rod anymore. The other
No.
rod I'll grab here, Pete, is this is the one. I mean, I'm excited about all of them, but this one right here, I'm probably the most excited about because it's never been done before. This is a 9-foot dipsy diver rod, but it's a telescoping dipsy diver rod. There's not one on the market like it. Again, most diver rods, I have no place to store them. I'm laying them on the floor of my boat because there's no good place to put them. And so this is a 9-foot long telescoping diver rod. It's just perfect action for diver fishing. You can use this rod if you want for pulling wire or something like that too. But this rod was originally designed for dipsy diver fishing, and I think we nailed it with this rod.
Yeah, I'm really excited to put that one in my hands. That I love the telescoping idea behind that.
Absolutely.
Because you got to think too, as a 2-piece diver rod, where it comes together, that's where a majority of the stress is on the rod, is where those two come together, because it's pulling that diver the whole time.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy on Facebook that thought that the telescoping aspect would make that rod not as strong. It actually makes it stronger. Where the telescope's in makes it that much stronger. It's a stronger material that we use down there at the bottom of the blank. And so I don't know 100% why that there hasn't been a telescoping dipsy diver rod on the market. But when they had said, let's make a diver rod, I was like, let's make a telescoping one, because I want one that fits in my rod locker, and I want one that I don't have to step over all the time. And for us, the guys that are fishing a lot of dipsy divers, traditionally 10, 11-foot long diver rods are what people are looking for. The reason for that is because back in the day, we ran long booms on our downriggers. And so you had to have a rod that was long enough to get past that boom on the downrigger. for the most part, all the traveling I do anymore, most guys are fishing a shorter boom. I'm fishing a shorter boom on the downrigger. I don't need to have it out there a long ways. And so a 9-foot rod is plenty to get past the boom on our downriggers. And it's just easier to store those rods. It's easier to use those rods in a smaller boat. And so I tend to pretty much primarily fish a 9-foot dipsy. Even before we developed these rods, I was going to a 9-foot dipsy is what I was fishing.
Nice, man. Nice. So you guys got the planer rods, like the planer board rods, the bottom bouncer rod, the downrigger rod, the dipsy rod. Those are the four in
the four, and then the fifth one of that lineup is the fact that there's 2 different length planer board rods. So there's 5 rods total, a 7.5 and an 8.5, but it's 5 rods total in this lineup. And like I said, we might come out with more in the future, but for the most part, those rods right there are going to do 99.9% of my trolling in all of the Great Lakes that we go to. That's perfect actions and the perfect lengths for salmon fishing with lead core, walleye fishing, bottom bouncer fish. Everything that we do in the Great Lakes region, I can do with those 5 rods.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. And when do you know when about that's going to hit, those are going to hit the market, or what we're kind of looking at?
Yeah, we did a podcast yesterday for Eagle Claw, and they had told us that they're going to be available in retailers in November. Is right now is what we're trying to hit.
Oh man, so we're gonna have them for the show
soon, and that's the plan, is to have them for sport shows and the winter sport shows.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right, man.
That was the whole thing, is they released them at ICAST, and we wanted to make sure that they were going to be available to ship relatively shortly.
Oh, okay.
ICAST is in July, and we wanted to have them in stores by fall, and it looks like we'll be able to hit that.
That makes sense now with the timing of everything, with it being around ICAST. Yeah, man, I'm excited for those two. I think you nailed it with the price point. Obviously the quality is going to be a good rod, because I have a hard time believing you and your dad are going to use shit. So,
yeah.
But hey, man, I've taken up enough of your time today. We're running out of time. Sometime after August, we've got to sit down and talk a little bit more. I mean, you and I, we talked about it right before the show started. Like, we're nerds of the actual industry itself, so we could sit here and talk for a really long time. But I really, really appreciate you giving us some time. Is there anything else that you want to add about the baits, about the rods? Where can these people find you? Yeah. What does Fishing 411 have going on? Kind of let them know what's going on.
Yeah, just a quick overview of 411. Right now we're shooting season 18 of Fishing 411. I think we have 9 shows or 10 shows shot this year. Cool stuff this year, a little bit different. We've traveled to some new areas. I'm actually in August it'll be a show that I'm going to shoot. I haven't shot yet, but it'll be for you guys to see when the show airs. Is we're going to be going out to Rainy Lake. We haven't shot a show out there, so that'll be some new areas. We did some shows on Green Bay this year. Of course, we did shows on Lake Erie. We've done shows all over the place, but for the most part, some new fisheries that we haven't showcased before will be on this season. It's an exciting thing. Season 18 of TV. It's pretty blessed to be in it for this many years.
Yeah, man, it's amazing. And you guys work with some really good people. You've got some good stuff going on. Personally, I'm really excited to see that Green Bay episode. I watch a lot of YouTube on Green Bay and those guys that fish it. And I'm excited to see how you guys break it down.
Ton of fish casting. It was so much fun. It was a very, very cool.
I know, man. I got to get out there. Yeah. I got to get out there on a spring and just start bombing hair jigs and ripping wraps.
Yep, that's what we did. That's 100% what we did. It was a good time, a lot of fish, and a lot of good information there. Again, if I stress that with 411, is that what I personally want is, if you watch an episode, I want you to be able to go to that location. I want you to be able to use the stuff that we used at the time of year that we were there and be successful. That's the goal. So I really want guys to watch the show and be like, wow, they caught them on Green Bay. This is the time of year they were there. Go there and do that. Go catch some fish, because that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, get on the water and go catch a pile of fish.
Yeah, man, and that's honestly, that's a big reason that I love 411, is you guys were always one of those shows that, it wasn't about the fish catching. It was about the process of catching the fish. You can go on YouTube and watch a lot of fish get caught, and you can talk to a lot of people, and, even people come in the bait shop. Everyone loves to brag about the fish they're catching. We're here as a bait shop. This is why I do the podcast. This is why we have the YouTube, is to inform people and help them learn. I knew you'd be perfect coming on here, because that's what you guys do. So thank you. Thank you very much for spending your time. Don't go anywhere, because as soon as we hang up, I just want to cover some things. So don't go anywhere.
Sure, sounds good.
But guys, please like, share, and subscribe. You can catch this video on YouTube or anywhere you podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. any of those places. You can find us on YouTube at Hook One Fishing. Thank you for tuning in again. Jake, appreciate you, brother. And we will talk to you all again soon. Get out there and get your Bill Lewis PWCs or come visit us in the store. Thank you guys, and tight lines.